Greetings, fellow scribes! Welcome back to the archive. This week, I conclude my two-part series talking about Call of Cthulhu by talking about the systems and mechanics. As Call of Cthulhu was originally released in 1983, it was one of the two dominant archetypes on systems from that period. The percentile systems and the D20-based systems. Call of Cthulhu, of course, was one of the percentile-based. So, with that said, sit back, relax, and enjoy as I talk about the mechanics of Call of Cthulhu. Well, let's start off with the most basic elements. Call of Cthulhu was, of course, a percentile-based system. This was a system where you would roll under a number. And all the skills were set on a base percentage. Some had absolute set, you start off at this. Others, you started off at a base of a specific attribute. Combat was determined, initiative was determined by a simple number of your dexterity. If you had two people with identical dexterities, you rolled off on a percentile die. This was a roll low based system. And how the combat turn worked was everyone who had a gun out and ready got to shoot. Then everybody, including those who also had guns, got to take their actions in dexterity order. Then, in those instances where you had a gun that could shoot 3 times in a round, you would then get your third shot at half your rating, half your skill rating. And that was it. There was no defense roll unless someone had dodge. You could only dodge the first shot fired at you a turn. Although any melee attacks you could dodge. If you had the parry skill, you could parry melee attacks. And the sequence went: you were attacked, you got a dodge, you got a parry. If you chose to dodge, you could not make any attacks that round. But, as I said, combat in Call of Cthulhu was really something you wanted to avoid in general. And, of course, you got to do damage based on the weapon that you were using. That's where you use different dice. But again, it was a fairly simple and straightforward system. But of course, character creation and advancement, that's where Call of Cthulhu caught me as always being different from the other systems. Character creation in Call of Cthulhu started with a classic random attribute generation system. The attributes of strength, constitution, power, dexterity, and appearance you rolled 3 dice 6 for. For size and intelligence, you rolled 2 dice 6 plus 6. For education, you rolled 3 dice 6 plus 3. Sanity, arguably the most important of all the attributes in this game, was a derived stat. It was your power times 5. Your starting sanity points equal your starting sanity. And unless your power changed for any reason, your sanity would never change. Sanity was a very important attribute because it determined also when you lost sanity, or when you lost sanity points specifically. Many things that would occur would cause you to do a sanity check. If you rolled under your sanity, you pass. If you rolled over, you lost sanity points. And when you lose sanity points, things get bad. Of course, the minimum starting age for a character was their education plus 6 years. What that means is the minimum you could get in education was 6. So in theory, if you rolled really poorly, you could start off with a character who was a minimum of 12 years old. That's kind of scary. And for every 10 years old your character was beyond their minimum age, you added 1 to your education and got an additional 20 occupation points. However, if you were over 40, every 10 years beyond 40, you would subtract from either strength, constitution, dexterity, or appearance. Now, of course, you had your characteristic rolls, which basically the chance to do anything based on a straight up characteristic were that characteristic times 5. Intelligence gave you your idea rolls, which were intelligence times 5. Know rolls, the chance to know something, was education times 5. And luck was power times 5. Strength and size added together determined your damage bonuses for unarmed combat, or armed and physical combat. And then you had the big thing. You see, ideally your sanity could go up to 99. However, there's a skill, Cthulhu Mythos. This skill starts at 0%. As your character gets into dealing with the Cthulhu Mythos, as your character deals with more and more of these things man was not meant to know, he becomes less mentally stable. Now, very few people start off with a maximum of 99 sanity. So, early on, learning Cthulhu Mythos related things doesn't really impact them. But, as you learn the Cthulhu Mythos skill, as the skill goes up, you black out the highest ratings of sanity. The maximum sanity points a character can ever have is not based on their sanity. It's based on 99 minus their skill in the Cthulhu Mythos. Yeah. And that's one of the big things to remember. This skill is both a way to know what you're dealing with, but it also gradually drives you bonkers. Of course, you would pick an occupation. Now, there were a number of sample occupations, but you could work with your GM on finding the right occupation for your character, adjusting it, making something new that wasn't in the book. And, each occupation had a select set of 8 skills. You would get 20 points times your education. And you'd be able to assign that between those skills. Then you would get a number of extra skill points from your intelligence times 10 that are for your interest skills. You had to use all these skill points. Anything you didn't spend, bye-bye. It was lost. All skills have a certain value that they start at. While electronics and anthropology start at 1, there are skills that start at 10, 15, 50%. And you assign these skills to that starting value. You put these points into these skills, and you could never have a skill higher than 99. Though at character creation, you should never have a skill higher than 95. One of the things that made Call of Cthulhu interesting was it did not have experience points. What would happen is, if you used a skill and the GM felt you significantly used that skill, the GM would have you put a check by it. And then at the end of the story, or at a point of downtime, the GM would have everyone do advancement checks. And these checks were, if you rolled above your skill rating, you would go up a variable amount. Generally speaking, it was like a 1 die that was rolled, and that would advance your skill a few points. And that's what happened. That is Call of Cthulhu character creation and advancement in a nutshell. Sanity is something to talk about for another time if I come back to Call of Cthulhu, because that's its own kettle of fish. Next week, I haven't decided what I'm going to talk about for next week yet. So, until next week's overview video, I'd like you all to remember to have fun and keep gaming.